The relentless hum of cicadas provided the only consistent soundtrack to the sprawling, impeccably manicured gardens of the prestigious Silverwood estate. Nestled deep within Viridia, an exclusive community where wealth was not merely displayed but ostentatiously proclaimed, Silverwood was an emerald jewel, its meticulously sculpted hedges and vibrant floral displays a testament to untold fortunes. And amidst this verdant opulence, a figure moved with quiet, almost meditative focus: Arthur Finch. In his late 60s, perhaps early 70s, Arthur was the estate's gardener, a man whose unassuming presence seemed almost to merge with the very earth he tended. He was a creature of routine and meticulous care, his worn, practical gardening clothes, faded denim overalls, sturdy, mud-splattered boots, and a straw hat perpetually shadowing his kind, weathered face, a stark contrast to the polished gleam of the mansions that surrounded him. His work was a silent ballet of diligence. With pruning shears that seemed an extension of his own calloused hands, he meticulously shaped a centuries-old rosebush, each snip precise, almost surgical, as if he understood the very language of the plant. He knelt for long stretches, tending to delicate orchids in a specialized greenhouse, his movements slow, deliberate, infused with a deep, unspoken respect for the fragile beauty under his care. He moved through the estate's vast grounds with the calm assurance of someone profoundly connected to the land. Every weed pulled, every leaf raked, an act of quiet devotion. He was a man of the soil, grounded and unassuming, his deep understanding of nature far surpassing the superficial appreciation of its human inhabitants. The tranquility of Arthur's world, however, was about to be disturbed by the arrival of Mrs. Alistair Finch Smythe. She was the newest resident in a neighboring mansion, a towering, newly built monstrosity of glass and chrome that seemed to sneer at Silverwood's understated, classic elegance. In her 50s, Mrs. Finch Smythe was the epitome of ostentatious wealth and relentless social climbing. Every strand of her perfectly coiffed blonde hair was in place. Every piece of her impeccably tailored designer outfit, a blindingly white linen suit that seemed to defy the very concept of a smudge, screamed expensive. Her sharp, judgmental gaze seemed to miss nothing, yet understood very little. She viewed manual labor with an almost aristocratic disdain, a necessary evil performed by the unseen, the unimportant. Her life revolved around maintaining an outward facade of effortless perfection, and she expected the world around her to conform to her exacting, superficial standards. On her inaugural morning stroll through her new, perfectly manicured grounds, which, to her chagrin, abutted Silverwood's more verdant, less overtly modern expanse, Mrs. Finch Smythe spotted Arthur. He was crouched by a particularly ancient camellia bush, meticulously deadheading spent blooms, his straw hat tipped forward, obscuring his face. The sight of his worn overalls, his mud-splattered boots, and the general earthiness of his presence sent a ripple of distaste through her. He looked, to her refined sensibilities, entirely unprofessional, an unsightly blot on the pristine landscape she now considered part of her extended view. She straightened her shoulders, her nose tilting slightly. "Good morning," she announced, her voice precise, almost clipped, carrying just enough volume to be heard but lacking any genuine warmth. Arthur paused, slowly rising to his full, somewhat stooped height, and offered a polite, almost imperceptible nod. He did not speak. Mrs. Finch Smythe continued, her gaze sweeping over his attire with thinly veiled disapproval. "You're the gardener here at Silverwood, I presume?" she stated rather than asked, as if the very idea was a slight. "I must say, the estate is truly magnificent. Though," she paused, allowing her implied criticism to hang in the air, "one does expect a certain standard of presentation, even from the staff, wouldn't you agree? Especially in a community such as Viridia." Her eyes lingered pointedly on a faint smudge of soil on his cheek, a stray leaf clinging to his shoulder. Perhaps something a little more discreet? Less disheveled? It's important to maintain the aesthetic, you understand, for the image of the estate. Her words, delivered with a condescending sweetness, were clear. His presence, his very existence in such working clothes, was an affront to her refined sensibilities. She wasn't asking, she was dictating. She then turned her gaze towards the vast estate, as if mentally assessing its worth, its image, above all else. Arthur merely offered another slight nod, a fleeting, almost imperceptible smile playing at the corners of his mouth. There was no outward sign of offense, no flicker of anger, or even recognition of her implied insult. His eyes, however, held a quiet, almost imperceptible amusement, a deep, knowing twinkle that suggested a wisdom far beyond her grasp. He simply turned back to the camellia, resuming his pruning with unwavering focus, his actions speaking louder than any words. He knew, with a certainty that transcended mere politeness, that any attempt at verbal defense would be wasted on a mind so rigidly confined by superficiality. As Arthur worked, his gnarled fingers delicately tending to a particularly rare, almost iridescent orchid within the greenhouse, he brushed his left wrist against a thorny branch. The contact was gentle, barely a prick, but it was enough to momentarily push back the rolled-up cuff of his sleeve. For a brief, fleeting moment, a subtle, almost imperceptible scar became visible on his left wrist. It was small, no bigger than a thumbnail, and intricately shaped like a tiny, stylized oak leaf. Its lines were fine, almost etched into his weathered skin. He quickly, almost instinctively, pulled his sleeve down, covering it as if it were a private secret, something not meant for casual eyes. The scar seemed to carry a faint, almost unnoticeable warmth, a subtle thrum against his skin that was both familiar and profound. It hinted at a deep, personal history intricately tied to the very land he now tended, whispering of a past he meticulously hid, a profound, almost fated connection to his origins, perhaps even a critical decision point in his life that had shaped his destiny in ways no one could guess. As he concealed the scar, he gently, almost instinctively, touched the smooth, vibrant leaf of the orchid he was tending, as if sharing a secret bond with the plant, a quiet understanding that transcended words. The afternoon wore on, the sun climbing higher, casting long, dappled shadows across Silverwood. Arthur continued his diligent work, moving from the orchid house to the vast, sprawling rose gardens. He was carefully tamping down the soil around a section of particularly fragile, rare antique rose bushes, a lineage of blooms that had graced the estate for over a century, and which, ironically, even Mrs. Finch Smythe had expressed a superficial admiration for during her initial tour of Silverwood. He was seemingly preoccupied with the meticulous task of weeding, his focus absolute. Suddenly, a loud grinding of gears shattered the peaceful hum of the cicadas. A large, unwieldy delivery truck, attempting to navigate the narrow service road behind the Finch Smythe property, misjudged a turn. The driver, distracted by a buzzing phone, began to back up, unaware of the precious rose bushes directly in his path. The truck's large tires were just inches from crushing the delicate plants, a potential horticultural disaster. Everyone else was either too far away, too absorbed in their own affairs, or simply too oblivious to notice the imminent catastrophe. Arthur, though seemingly engrossed in his weeding, saw it all. His eyes, though aged, were remarkably sharp, missing nothing. Without a word, without a shout, without drawing any attention whatsoever to himself, he acted. With a calm yet swift motion, he reached out and gently, but deliberately, nudged a small, decorative stone marker that bordered the rosebed. It was just enough, a subtle displacement of a few inches. The stone, now positioned at a slightly different angle, caught the sunlight in the driver's rearview mirror, reflecting a glint that was just enough to catch the distracted driver's eye. The driver jolted, saw the stone marker where there had seemingly been nothing moments before, and slammed on his brakes, bringing the truck to a shuddering halt, mere inches from the roses. The plants were safe. Arthur, without missing a beat, without a flicker of self-congratulation, simply resumed his weeding. His quiet act of care completed, the small stone marker now returned to its original, inconspicuous position. He melted back into the background, a silent guardian of the estate. This unassuming act of quick thinking and genuine helpfulness, putting the well-being of the gardens above his own visibility or desire for credit, highlighted his profound connection to the estate and his truly unassuming nature. He wasn't seeking recognition. He was simply being Arthur Finch, the man who understood the land and protected it in ways no one, least of all Mrs. Finch Smythe, could ever comprehend. His quiet diligence, his deep understanding of the estate, and the subtle warmth of the oak leaf scar on his wrist, all whispered of a truth far grander than his simple gardener's overalls suggested. The incident with the delivery truck, while seemingly minor, served only to reinforce Mrs. Alastair Finch Smythe's conviction that Silverwood, magnificent as it was, suffered from a profound lack of proper oversight. Her initial impression of Arthur Finch's disheveled appearance festered into a full-blown obsession. She saw him not as a diligent worker, but as a symbol of the estate's antiquated, perhaps even neglectful, management. In her world, perfection was non-negotiable, and anyone or anything that deviated from her exacting standards was a blight to be corrected. She often held impromptu consultations with other new residents, subtly turning the conversation to Arthur's attire, lamenting the decline in standards, and how one simply doesn't see such things in proper estates. Her words, like carefully aimed darts, began to prick at the genteel tranquility of the neighborhood, stirring a quiet unease among those who valued appearance above all else. Mrs. Finch Smythe's primary point of contact for all her newfound grievances was Mr. Sterling, the estate's property manager. Sterling was a man perpetually caught between a rock and a hard place, an obsequious figure in his late 50s, whose thinning hair and perpetually furrowed brow spoke volumes of the stress of managing the demands of Viridia's elite. He was a master of polite evasion, a diplomat of delayed action, adept at soothing ruffled feathers without actually making any significant changes. To Mrs. Finch Smythe, he was merely an instrument, a means to achieve her desired level of pristine, unblemished perfection. She bombarded him with emails, each one meticulously detailing a perceived flaw. A stray leaf on her driveway, blown from Silverwood, naturally. A rose bush she deemed too wild, or, most frequently, Arthur's unsightly presence. Mr. Sterling, she would write, her words dripping with condescension, I truly must insist that your gardener adheres to a more appropriate dress code. His current attire is simply not befitting an estate of this caliber. It reflects poorly on all of us, frankly. Sterling would read these emails, sigh, and file them away, occasionally offering a vague, non-committal response, a practiced dance of deference and inaction. He knew Arthur. He knew the history of Silverwood. But he also knew his job depended on keeping the influential Mrs. Finch Smythe appeased, however superficially. Arthur, meanwhile, continued his work with his characteristic, almost profound serenity. The drone of Mrs. Finch Smythe's complaints, carried on the occasional breeze or relayed through Sterling's apologetic murmurs, seemed to wash over him without leaving a trace. He never directly acknowledged her criticisms, never defended his attire, or altered his routine. His focus remained unwavering on the subtle artistry of his craft. He moved through the gardens like a silent, indispensable force, shaping the landscape not according to transient whims, but according to the ancient rhythms of nature and the timeless beauty embedded in Silverwood's very soul. He understood the estate in a way no other human could, a connection far deeper than mere employment. During his quiet hours in the vast ancient library of the main Silverwood Manor, a privilege granted to him many decades ago, long before Thorne's arrival, a secret held quietly between Arthur and the previous, more benevolent estate managers. Arthur delved into old ledgers, historical blueprints, and dusty archival photographs. The library, dimly lit and smelling of aged paper and wood polish, was a sanctuary where he pieced together the intricate tapestry of Silverwood's past. He traced the lineage of every ancient tree, every meandering path, every stone wall. He discovered long-forgotten designs for fountains, meticulously hand-drawn plans for secret gardens that had never been realized. His eyes, though sometimes weary from his physical labor, sharpened with a profound intensity as he immersed himself in this history. He wasn't just reading, he was communing with the very spirit of the estate, understanding its architectural and horticultural evolution with an intimacy that far surpassed any formal historical knowledge. As he pored over these ancient documents, the faint, almost imperceptible oak leaf scar on his left wrist would begin to hum. A low, steady thrum against his skin. It wasn't painful, but a subtle, persistent warmth that pulsed with each turn of a page, with each new discovery. This scar, he knew, was more than just a mark. It was a remnant of a nearly forgotten childhood accident, a fall from a grand ancient oak tree on the very grounds of Silverwood. But it was also something more. It was a symbol of his family's long-held connection to this land, a mark passed down through generations of silent guardians who had tended these grounds, not as employees, but as caretakers, stewards of a profound legacy. The scar was a constant whisper of that lost heritage, a silent promise of a destiny interwoven with the very fabric of Silverwood, a profound legacy he had lived out in quiet anonymity for decades. He was not just connected to the land, he was a living embodiment of its memory. One particularly sweltering afternoon, Mrs. Finch-Smythe's complaints escalated. She had been hosting a small, exclusive garden party, an attempt to subtly outshine her neighbors, and was mortified when Arthur, oblivious to the presence of her high society guests, had driven his mud-splattered utility vehicle across a section of her perfectly manicured lawn, leaving faint tire tracks. To her, it was a public humiliation, an act of intentional disrespect. She immediately stormed into the main Silverwood manor, bypassing Mr. Sterling, and demanded an audience with the estate's legal team. She insisted on a formal complaint, citing trespass, damage to private property, and a consistent pattern of unprofessional conduct. She wanted Arthur gone, not just fired, but permanently removed from the premises. Her voice, usually carefully modulated, rose to a shrill crescendo, detailing Arthur's unacceptable appearance, his disruptive presence, and her demand that this gardener, whatever his name is, be removed at once. He simply does not understand the standards required for this level of property ownership. She slammed a neatly typed, highly indignant letter onto Mr. Sterling's desk, demanding its immediate transmission to the highest authority of the estate. Mr. Sterling, for once, looked truly uncomfortable. He stammered, fumbled with his tie, and tried to placate her with promises of investigation and review. But Mrs. Finch-Smythe was relentless. "I want action, Mr. Sterling. Immediate action. This man is an eyesore. He is a blot on the landscape. He is beneath this estate." The urgency in her voice, coupled with the explicit legal threats, compelled Sterling to send the complaint directly to the owner, a figure known only to a select few high-level executives and lawyers as the principal. This owner was a notoriously reclusive individual, whose vast portfolio of properties stretched across the globe, Silverwood being just one jewel in a glittering crown. They managed their affairs through layers of trusts, holding companies, and highly discreet legal representatives. No one in Viridia, not even Mrs. Finch-Smythe in her wildest social climbing fantasies, had ever met the principal. They were a phantom, a name whispered in awe and speculation, their power vast but unseen. Sterling carefully drafted the official complaint, detailing Mrs. Finch-Smythe's grievances, including specific mention of Arthur's unprofessional attire and lack of decorum. He attached photos of the faint tire tracks on the lawn, alongside excerpts from Mrs. Finch-Smythe's numerous, increasingly vitriolic emails about Arthur's presence. The complaint was dispatched through the complex legal channels to a highly secretive, encrypted email address. Within hours, Sterling received a terse, two-word reply from the principal's representative. Meeting demanded. Sterling felt a cold dread creep into his stomach. A personal meeting with the principal was virtually unheard of. This was a severe escalation. He immediately informed Mrs. Finch-Smythe, who, despite her initial triumph, also felt a flicker of apprehension. "Demanded?" she repeated, her voice losing some of its usual imperiousness. "Why demanded?" I am unsure, madam," Sterling stammered. "It seems the principal wishes to address this matter directly. A meeting has been scheduled for tomorrow afternoon in Silverwood's main parlor. They will be present." Mrs. Finch-Smythe felt a thrill of anticipation mingled with unease. This was it, her chance to impress the principal, to solidify her standing in Viridia, to finally rid herself of the annoying gardener. She spent the entire morning planning her outfit, rehearsing her carefully crafted complaints, preparing to make her most powerful, most refined impression. She envisioned herself as the champion of standards, the vigilant guardian of Silverwood's elite image. She was convinced that once the principal saw the situation through her eyes, Arthur Finch would be swiftly and unceremoniously dismissed, his worn overalls and mud-splattered boots banished forever from her perfect view. This was her moment, her ultimate triumph. She had no idea that the principal was not a distant, faceless entity, but the very man she sought to humiliate. The stage was set, not just for a corporate confrontation, but for a profound personal reckoning, the irony of which would be utterly devastating. The summons for a direct meeting with the principal sent a tremor of both apprehension and giddy excitement through Mrs. Alistair Finch Smythe. She saw it as a vindication of her meticulous standards, a testament to her keen eye for detail that even the highest authority of Silverwood acknowledged her concerns. For the next 24 hours, the Finch Smythe mansion buzzed with a feverish energy. She meticulously planned her attire for the meeting, a bespoke silk suit in a subtle power blue, perfectly complemented by a string of antique pearls and understated diamond studs. Every detail, from her perfectly coiffed hair to her manicured nails, was a testament to her unyielding pursuit of perfection, a visual declaration of her unwavering commitment to the standards she so vocally championed. She rehearsed her complaints about Arthur Finch in front of a full-length mirror, perfecting her tone of elegant indignation, emphasizing his disruptive presence and flagrant disregard for decorum. She envisioned herself as the champion of Silverwood's pristine image, ready to articulate her grievances to the unseen power behind the estate. This was her moment, she believed, to solidify her position not just as a resident, but as a cultural arbiter, an indispensable guardian of the community's exclusive aura. Meanwhile, Mr. Sterling, the estate's property manager, was a nervous wreck. The rare, direct intervention of the principal suggested a gravity to the situation he hadn't fully anticipated. He spent the morning frantically reviewing security footage, preparing incident reports, and poring over Arthur's spotless employment record, trying to find any blemish, any justification for Mrs. Finch Smythe's relentless complaints. He found nothing. Arthur's file was pristine, filled with decades of commendations for his diligence, his encyclopedic knowledge of horticulture, and his unwavering loyalty. Sterling knew, deep down, that Arthur was irreplaceable, a quiet force who knew Silverwood more intimately than anyone. He dreaded the meeting, caught between his duty to appease a powerful resident and his underlying respect for the unassuming gardener. He felt a profound sense of foreboding, a quiet alarm bell ringing in his gut that something significant, perhaps even irreversible, was about to transpire. Arthur, on the other hand, approached the impending meeting with a quiet, almost serene calm. He went about his morning duties with his usual meticulousness, tending to the roses, checking on the orchids, ensuring every leaf was in place, every path swept clean. The sun warmed his back, and the familiar scent of damp earth and blooming flowers filled his senses. The faint, steady warmth emanating from the oak leaf scar on his left wrist was more pronounced than usual, a subtle but insistent thrum. It was a comforting presence, a deep resonance that vibrated with a sense of profound anticipation. It spoke of cycles, of roots, of deep-seated truths about to surface. He knew this meeting was not merely about Mrs. Finch Smythe's complaints. It was about the unveiling of a legacy, the culmination of a story far older and deeper than anyone in Viridia could possibly imagine. He felt a quiet excitement building within him, not of triumph over another, but of an impending liberation, a shedding of decades of self-imposed anonymity. The meeting was set to take place in Silverwood's main parlor, a grand, sun-drenched room steeped in history. Its walls were adorned with antique tapestries depicting pastoral scenes. Its polished mahogany furniture gleamed softly, and a large, intricately carved fireplace dominated one end of the room. A sense of timeless elegance pervaded the space, a quiet dignity that seemed to mock the petty squabbles of its temporary occupants. As the appointed time approached, Mrs. Finch Smythe arrived, ushered in by a visibly perspiring Mr. Sterling. She took a seat on a plush velvet armchair, her posture rigid, her gaze sweeping over the room, mentally assessing its worth and confirming its adherence to her standards. She had prepared a crisp, neatly typed summary of her complaints, ready to present her case with unassailable logic and refined indignation. Sterling hovered nervously by the door, occasionally adjusting his tie, his gaze flickering between Mrs. Finch Smythe and the closed double doors through which the principal was expected to enter. The minutes stretched, heavy with anticipation. Mrs. Finch-Smythe cleared her throat, rehearsing her opening remarks one last time. Sterling checked his watch for the 10th time. The silence in the room was broken only by the distant chirping of birds from the garden and the faint tick-tock of a grandfather clock in the hall. Then the large ornate double doors of the parlor slowly, almost imperceptibly, began to open. Mrs. Finch-Smythe straightened, a triumphant smile beginning to form on her lips. She expected a phalanx of stern-faced lawyers, perhaps a discreet assistant, or even a formidable, impeccably dressed corporate titan. She envisioned a figure of immense distant power, someone who would instantly grasp the gravity of her concerns and swiftly rectify the problem that was Arthur Finch. But standing in the doorway, framed by the sunlit archway, was Arthur Vance. He wasn't in his usual mud-splattered overalls. He wore simple yet impeccably tailored, dark linen trousers and a crisp, clean white shirt, its sleeves rolled up to reveal his forearms. His boots were polished to a shine, but they were still the sturdy, practical boots he wore in the gardens, hinting at his connection to the earth. His hair, usually hidden beneath his straw hat, was neatly combed, revealing a distinguished silver sheen. His face, though still weathered, held a profound serenity, a quiet authority that seemed to fill the very air of the room. His eyes, usually placid, now held a deep, knowing twinkle, a wisdom that seemed to stretch back through centuries. Mrs. Finch-Smythe's triumphant smile faltered, then vanished completely. Her jaw went slack. "You!" she stammered, her voice a strangled whisper, laced with incredulity and profound contempt. "What are you doing here? Get out. This is a private meeting. Mr. Sterling, remove this man at once." Her perfectly coiffed hair seemed to stiffen, her body rigid with a mixture of outrage and disbelief. The audacity, the sheer impropriety of the gardener gatecrashing such an important meeting was beyond comprehension. Mr. Sterling, equally stunned, took a step forward, a confused stammer on his lips. "Arthur, what?" Arthur Vance did not move from the doorway. He met Mrs. Finch-Smythe's furious gaze with a calm, unwavering stillness. The familiar faint warmth on his left wrist, emanating from the subtle oak leaf scar, seemed to intensify, spreading through him, anchoring him to this moment, to this revelation. It was a silent affirmation of his journey, a quiet hum of power now fully realized. He slowly raised his left hand, extending it slightly towards Mrs. Finch-Smythe, his palm open. On his wrist, perfectly centered and clearly visible in the sunlit doorway, was the small, distinct mark of the oak leaf scar. His voice, when he finally spoke, was low, clear, and utterly devoid of emotion. Yet it resonated with an undeniable authority that silenced all other sounds in the room. "There's no need for removal, Mrs. Finch-Smythe," Arthur stated, his gaze never leaving hers. "I am here by invitation." He paused, allowing the weight of his next words to sink in, each syllable landing with the precision of a carefully placed stone. "And as of this moment, I am the principal of Silverwood Estate." The revelation hung heavy in the opulent air, a devastating cosmic hammer blow. Mrs. Finch-Smythe's face went from pale to a mottled crimson, then to a ghastly shade of white. Her breath hitched, caught in her throat. She stared at him, then back at Mr. Sterling, then around the room as if seeking an escape from the unbearable truth. The reclusive, immensely powerful, unseen owner of Silverwood Estate, the figure she had so desperately sought to impress, the one whose judgment she had so fiercely courted, was the very man she had so casually, so cruelly, dismissed as an unprofessional, a disheveled gardener. The man whose unsightly clothes she had complained about, whose presence she had deemed a blot on the landscape, literally owned the ground she stood on, the very mansion she occupied. Her mind raced, scrambling to reconcile the unassuming figure before her with the vast unseen power he commanded. The irony was a bitter, suffocating pill. She, Mrs. Alistair Finch-Smythe, the champion of standards, the arbiter of taste, had been utterly outmaneuvered, exposed as a superficial fool by the quiet diligence and profound hidden depth of the man she had sought to humiliate. This is impossible," she finally managed to stammer, her voice a strangled whisper, laced with disbelief and a rising terror. You're a gardener. You have no standing. This is a trick." Arthur merely offered that faint, knowing smile again, a flicker of amusement in his ancient eyes. He finally stepped fully into the room, closing the heavy doors behind him, sealing their fates within the elegant parlor. His voice, now softer but no less authoritative, filled the stunned silence. "My standing, Mrs. Finch Smythe," he said, "was forged not in boardrooms, but in the soil of this very estate. My connection to this land, to its history, to its future, is far deeper than any deed or title. You complained about my clothes, my lack of decorum. But my clothes are suited to my work, and my work is the beating heart of Silverwood. You saw only what you wished to see. A servant. You failed to see the steward. And that, madam," he concluded, his gaze steady and unwavering, "is the fundamental difference between us." He gestured calmly to the neatly typed complaint resting on the side table, the one she had so proudly prepared. "Your grievances, particularly regarding Mr. Finch's unprofessional attire and lack of decorum, have been thoroughly reviewed," he stated, his voice resonating with an unassailable authority. "Under the new management and revised standards of Silverwood Estate, those particular concerns are deemed irrelevant. As for your complaints of trespass and damage to your lawn, Mr. Sterling has provided detailed security footage. It appears Mr. Finch was merely following a long-established, unwritten protocol for maintaining the grounds. Any minor disruption was incidental to his dedicated work." He paused, allowing the full weight of his words to settle upon her. "Furthermore, Mrs. Finch Smythe," he continued, his tone shifting to one of quiet finality, "your consistent pattern of harassment, your disruptive influence within the community, and your blatant disregard for the well-being of our long-standing invaluable staff, specifically Mr. Arthur Finch, has become untenable. Your tenancy agreement, under new provisions, contains clauses regarding respectful conduct within the Silverwood community. It has become evident that you are unable to adhere to these standards." His eyes held hers, unwavering. "Therefore, Mrs. Finch Smythe, your lease at the neighboring property will be terminated with immediate effect. You have 72 hours to vacate the premises." The words, delivered with such calm precision, struck Mrs. Finch Smythe with the force of a physical blow. Her carefully constructed world, built on facades and superficial judgments, crumbled around her. She was not only silenced and humiliated, but utterly dispossessed, stripped of her coveted status in the very community she had sought to dominate. The irony was a cruel, perfect blade. The stage was set, not just for a corporate overthrow, but for a profound personal reckoning, the ultimate triumph of quiet dignity over hollow arrogance. The snooty neighbor, complaining about the gardener's clothes, had just learned the true meaning of ownership. The morning arrived with an ominous, almost suffocating hush over the Viridia Gallery of Fine Arts. A palpable tension, thick as the dust Ethan swept, hung in the air. For weeks, Julian Thorne had been consumed by a frantic energy, a man teetering on the precipice of losing everything. The whispers about the gallery's stagnation had amplified into outright murmurs of doubt among his board members. The Artisan Collective, far from being discredited, had only grown bolder, their latest pop-up exhibition, in an abandoned train station drawing record crowds and unprecedented critical acclaim, eclipsing anything the Viridia Gallery had produced in years. Thorne's paranoia had peaked. He felt eyes on him from every direction, unseen forces conspiring against his reign. He had doubled down on surveillance, adding more discreet cameras, convinced that some external enemy, some amateur saboteur, was undermining him. His ego, once a formidable fortress, was now a crumbling edifice, riddled with the cracks of insecurity and desperation. He was a predator cornered, lashing out blindly. This particular morning was designated for a highly anticipated, yet utterly nerve-wracking board meeting. It wasn't just any meeting, it was a crisis summit. Key investors, skeptical critics, and a handful of influential art historians had been summoned, their faces grim, their posture rigid. The agenda, delivered with Thorne's characteristic, if now desperate, flourish, vaguely promised a strategic presentation addressing recent market challenges and unveiling new initiatives to reassert Viridia Gallery's dominance. Thorne intended to unveil a new, ludicrously expensive acquisition, a collection of dull, albeit historically significant European landscapes, and present a grandiose, completely fabricated plan for a global expansion. He believed that sheer audacity, backed by historical precedent and overwhelming opulence, could still sway opinion. He clung to the delusion that his charm and power alone could obscure the glaring deficiencies in his leadership and the gallery's increasingly stale collection. He had prepared for hours, practicing his dismissive tone, perfecting his condescending smiles. Meanwhile, Ethan Vance proceeded with his morning routine as he always did, his movements quiet, deliberate, almost invisible. He swept, he polished, he prepared the gallery for the day, for the meeting, for the inevitable reckoning. The faint, steady warmth emanating from the Celtic knot scar on his left wrist was more pronounced than usual, a gentle but insistent thrum, a silent chorus of anticipation. It pulsed with a profound energy, an almost mystical reassurance that the time was now, that his hidden heritage, his suppressed artistry, was finally poised to break free. He felt a quiet excitement building within him, a sense of destiny unfolding. He was no longer just the janitor. He was the orchestrator, the artist, the catalyst. He knew that the hidden camera, that tiny red eye that had observed his clandestine creations, held the key to his vindication and to Thorne's ultimate downfall. The board meeting convened in the gallery's largest, most prestigious meeting room, an opulent space adorned with Thorne's latest, most uninspired acquisitions. The room was tense, thick with the scent of expensive coffee and unspoken doubts. Thorne began his presentation, his voice booming with forced confidence, his carefully rehearsed words attempting to paint a rosy picture of growth and innovation. He projected charts and graphs onto a massive screen, all meticulously doctored to obscure the gallery's true financial stagnation. He spoke of unprecedented opportunities and redefining the artistic landscape, his words hollow in the increasingly skeptical silence. As Thorne reached the crescendo of his self-congratulatory monologue, attempting to introduce his stunning new acquisitions, a sharp, insistent buzz echoed through the room. It wasn't his phone, nor any of the executives. Thorne faltered, visibly annoyed. The large, pristine monitor at the front of the room, typically reserved for his PowerPoint presentations, suddenly flickered. The carefully prepared slide of dull landscapes vanished, replaced by an unexpected, grainy image. It was a live feed from one of the gallery's hidden surveillance cameras. A collective gasp swept through the room, followed by a ripple of confusion. Thorne spun around, his face contorted in a mask of bewildered fury. "What is this? Who did this? Get it off the screen!" he roared, pounding his cane on the marble floor. He tried frantically to access his tablet, to regain control of the display, but the screen remained locked on the live feed. And then, as if on cue, the grainy image on the screen began to change. The feed shifted from a static view to a time-lapse sequence. The room was bathed in an eerie blue glow from the monitor. What appeared next was utterly, breathtakingly impossible. The time-lapse showed Ethan Vance, the gallery's quiet, elderly janitor, moving through the deserted halls in the dead of night. At first, he was simply cleaning, his usual meticulous routine. But then, the ordinary began to transform into the extraordinary. The time-lapse accelerated, showcasing fleeting glimpses of his hidden artistry. The mop as a brush. Ethan's mop, usually a tool for grime, moved with a fluid grace, leaving intricate, ephemeral patterns on the polished floor. Moisture and dust swirled into transient landscapes, abstract forms that hinted at profound depth. The camera captured the subtle dance of light on these temporary canvases, making them shimmer with an otherworldly beauty before they were wiped away. The rag sculptures, discarded cleaning rags, previously seen as mere refuse, were meticulously arranged into intricate symbolic forms. A soaring bird taking flight from a tangled knot of fabric, a weeping eye formed from crumpled linen, a human figure bent in profound contemplation. These ephemeral sculptures appeared and disappeared with astonishing speed, captured only by the relentless eye of the camera. Light and shadow play. Using the ambient security lights and strategically placed reflective surfaces, discarded mirror shards, polished metal buckets, Ethan created dazzling displays of light and shadow, transforming mundane corners into dramatic tableau. The camera caught the ethereal dance of illumination, painting ghostly forms on the walls, giving life to inert objects. Found object. Art, broken pieces of pottery from a dropped vase, fallen leaves from the garden, even stray threads from an old tapestry. All were meticulously arranged into stunning symbolic compositions. A single vibrant red rose, nurtured from his own humble apartment, appeared on the floor beneath the reflection of a forgotten portrait, a silent tribute to unrecognized talent. The camera captured the raw beauty he found in discarded, forgotten things, the unveiling of the Celtic knot. Most astonishingly, the time-lapse showed moments where Ethan, lost in his creative process, would unconsciously reveal the Celtic knot scar on his left wrist. In magnified close-ups, the intricate design of the scar was clearly visible, hinting at a profound, unacknowledged heritage. The camera's zoom capabilities, intended to catch thieves, inadvertently highlighted the very symbol of his hidden genius. The board members, initially stunned, were now mesmerized. Their gasps turned to murmurs of awe, then to outright exclamations of disbelief and wonder. Thorne, meanwhile, stood utterly frozen, his face a ghastly shade of green, his eyes wide with a mixture of horror and dawning recognition. He recognized the gallery's walls, the very art he claimed to curate. He recognized the janitor. He saw the glitches he had dismissed, the optical illusions he had rationalized away, unfolding before him as undeniable, breathtaking acts of creation. The camera, intended to be his instrument of control, had become the silent witness to his blindness, his prejudice, his spectacular failure to recognize genius beneath his very nose. The footage continued to play, revealing the depth of Ethan's artistry. It showed him not just creating art, but interacting with the existing pieces, a subtle movement of a mop that drew a line mirroring a stroke in a modern painting, a precise placement of a cleaning bucket that framed a forgotten corner of a classical landscape, turning the entire gallery into his canvas, his studio, his unwitting collaborator. The sequence ended with a breathtaking shot. Ethan, standing silently before one of his ephemeral dust and light creations, a shimmering, fleeting image of a vast, star-filled galaxy swirling on the polished marble floor, the Celtic knot on his wrist pulsing faintly in the dim security light. It was a moment of profound beauty, a raw, undeniable testament to unbridled artistic spirit, a voice, clear and resonant, cut through the stunned silence. It was Ms. Evelyn Reed, the gallery's most influential and respected art critic, a woman known for her sharp intellect and unwavering integrity, who had been an early, quiet supporter of the Artisan Collective. She stood up, her eyes still fixed on the screen, tears glinting in them. "Julian," she began, her voice quivering with emotion, "what we are witnessing, this is not glitches. This is revelation. This is a profound living exhibition. This is the Artisan Collective." Her words hit Thorne like a physical blow. His face contorted in a desperate attempt to deny, to deflect. "Nonsense! This is a trick, a digital manipulation. He's just a janitor," he shrieked, his voice cracking, his carefully cultivated facade crumbling completely. He lunged toward the screen as if to tear the truth from its digital frame. But before he could reach it, the doors of the boardroom swung open. Through them streamed a small group of individuals, their faces a mixture of intensity and quiet triumph. They were the anonymous leaders of the Artisan Collective, their identities previously guarded with fanatical secrecy. And at their head, standing with a calm authority that commanded immediate silence, was a young woman, no older than 30, with vibrant, intelligent eyes, who carried herself with a fierce grace. Her name was Lyra, and etched subtly on her own left wrist, almost imperceptibly visible beneath the cuff of her bohemian chic sleeve, was a faint, stylized Celtic knot tattoo, identical in design to Ethan's scar. "No trick, Mr. Thorne," Lyra said, her voice clear and resonant, cutting through his panicked cries. "This is the truth. And he," she gestured towards Ethan, who stood quietly by the side, a serene expression on his face, "is not just a janitor. He is the original founder of the Artisan Collective. He is the master from whom we all learned. He is the hidden artist, the silent genius. And he is your grandfather, Julian." The revelation struck Thorne with the force of a cosmic hammer blow. His eyes, wide with disbelief and horror, snapped from Lyra to Ethan, then back to the screen where the Celtic knot on Ethan's wrist still faintly glowed. His grandfather? The man he had dismissed, ridiculed, and utterly ignored? The man whose daily presence he had despised? The very source of the artistic rebellion he so furiously sought to suppress was his own blood, his own family's forgotten legacy. The truth, exposed by his own surveillance, by the very technology he sought to control, was a public, devastating humiliation. He stumbled backward, collapsing into a chair, his face a mask of utter, speechless devastation, his reign utterly and irrevocably shattered. The gallery, the art world, the very fabric of his reality, had been irrevocably transformed by the quiet, impossible actions of the man he had never truly seen. The vindication for Ethan Vance was absolute, witnessed by an entire world now forced to acknowledge the genius that had quietly swept its floors. The boardroom, moments before a theater for Julian Thorne's final desperate act, now pulsed with a profound, almost sacred silence. The echoes of Lyra's bombshell, "He is your grandfather, Julian," still hung in the air, vibrating with an undeniable truth that shredded Thorne's reality. His face, a ghastly mosaic of disbelief and horror, remained frozen, locked in a tableau of utter devastation. The powerful, almost mystical hum emanating from the Celtic knot scar on Ethan Vance's wrist seemed to intensify, a silent affirmation of his ancient heritage now fully unveiled. It was a beacon of light piercing through decades of shadow, illuminating a lineage of artistry that Julian Thorne, in his blinding arrogance, had utterly failed to perceive, let alone appreciate. The revelation wasn't merely a personal blow to Thorne, it was a seismic shockwave that rippled through the entire art world. The executives, initially stunned into silence, erupted into a cacophony of hushed murmurs, then outright exclamations of shock and wonder. Their initial confusion gave way to a dawning, almost reverent understanding. The dismissed janitor, the liability Thorne had so carelessly derided, was not only a hidden artistic genius, but the progenitor of the artisan collective, the very movement that had challenged and, in essence, overthrown Thorne's stale dominion. This was a narrative far richer and more compelling than any acquisition, any market trend. It was a story of forgotten legacy, quiet resilience, and the triumph of authentic talent over commercial pretense. Ms. Evelyn Reed, the venerable art critic, now stood with tears openly streaming down her face, her usual professional reserve completely dissolved by the raw emotion of the moment. Her voice, though still quivering, rang with a newfound conviction. "This is beyond a mere exhibition, Julian," she declared, her gaze sweeping across the stunned faces of the board members. "This is an artistic revolution. The Viridia Gallery, under your stewardship, has been a mausoleum, a temple to the dead and the commercialized. But Ethan Vance, your own grandfather, has breathed life back into these halls, transforming the very act of maintenance into the highest form of creative expression. He has shown us that true art is not confined to frames or pedestals. It lives in the human spirit, in the unseen, in the profound act of creation, regardless of recognition." Her words were a stinging indictment, a public excommunication delivered by the very oracle of the art world. She turned to Ethan, her eyes shining with adoration. "Mr. Vance," she said, her voice filled with respect, "you are not just an artist, you are a living legend. You are the heart of the artisan collective, the very soul of this movement." The impact of Evelyn Reed's pronouncement was immense. Her endorsement, powerful and unassailable, validated everything that had just unfolded. The other board members, a diverse group of art historians, philanthropists, and influential cultural figures, quickly rallied. One by one, they rose from their seats, some with expressions of profound apology, others with renewed awe. The atmosphere shifted from one of confrontation to one of profound reverence. They looked at Ethan not as a janitor, but as a master, a revelation in their midst. Julian Thorne, meanwhile, remained collapsed in his chair, his face contorted in a mask of utter, speechless devastation. The weight of the public humiliation, the utter shattering of his carefully constructed reality, seemed to crush him. He stumbled backward, his carefully practiced composure utterly gone, his reign utterly and irrevocably shattered. The gallery, the art world, the very fabric of his carefully curated reality, had been irrevocably transformed by the quiet, impossible actions of the man he had never truly seen. His grandfather. The truth, exposed by his own surveillance, by the very technology he sought to control, was a public, devastating humiliation. He was a man utterly broken, reduced to a trembling husk of his former arrogant self. The vindication for Ethan Vance was absolute, witnessed by an entire world now forced to acknowledge the genius that had quietly swept its floors. But for Ethan, this wasn't about revenge. It was about liberation. The long-suppressed weight of his hidden identity, the decades of quiet artistic yearning, had finally been lifted. The faint, steady warmth of the Celtic knot on his wrist resonated with a profound sense of rightness, a quiet fulfillment. He was no longer just a janitor. He was home. Within hours, the news spread like wildfire beyond the boardroom. Art journalists, alerted by the sudden, cryptic shift in the gallery's internal feed, swarmed the building. News anchors breathlessly reported on the unfolding drama, their voices filled with incredulity and excitement. The hidden camera footage, initially intended for internal security, was leaked to the press, by whom no one publicly admitted, though the discreet smile on Lyra's face hinted at a strategic hand. The time-lapse videos of Ethan's impossible art went viral, captivating the world. Viewers were mesmerized by the silent janitor transforming dust into galaxies, rags into poignant figures, light into ethereal paintings. The story of his Celtic knot scar, explained by Lyra in an impromptu press conference, became a symbol of a forgotten artistic lineage, an ancient tradition resurrected by the most unassuming of hands. The public reaction was unprecedented. People poured into the streets of Viridia, drawn by the raw authenticity of the story. They gathered outside the gallery, holding signs proclaiming, "Art lives here," and "The janitor is the master." They shared images of Ethan's art, dissecting its layers of meaning, finding profundity in what had been dismissed as mundane. The irony was palpable. The very public Thorne had sought to control with exclusivity now embraced the very essence of inclusion. The immediate consequences for Thorne were severe. The board, influenced by public outrage and Evelyn Reed's powerful endorsement, unanimously voted to remove Julian Thorne from his position as director. His long history of valuing commercial gain over artistic integrity, his dismissive treatment of staff, and now, the profound revelation of his familial betrayal, provided ample grounds for his swift and unceremonious ousting. Thorne was not only stripped of his power, but faced significant legal repercussions related to his questionable financial dealings and the suppression of emerging artists. His carefully built empire crumbled, leaving him with nothing but a shattered reputation and the bitter taste of public condemnation. He was no longer a gatekeeper, but a pariah, his name synonymous with artistic hypocrisy. Conversely, the world opened up for Ethan Vance in ways he could never have imagined. Invitations flooded in from renowned galleries, prestigious art schools, and major publications. Art historians clamored to interview him, eager to uncover the secrets of his lost artistic lineage. Critics who had once lauded Thorne's collection now penned glowing, almost apologetic analyses of Ethan's raw genius. The artisan collective, no longer operating in the shadows, was thrust into the international spotlight, hailed as the vanguard of a new art movement, their message of accessible, authentic art resonating globally. Ethan, however, remained profoundly unchanged by the sudden glare of fame. The quiet dignity that had defined him as a janitor remained his core. He gently declined most of the grand offers, preferring to work with Lyra and the artisan collective. He insisted that his exhibition remain as it had been captured by the hidden cameras, a raw, unedited testament to his work, played on a continuous loop in the very boardroom where Thorne's downfall occurred, a stark reminder of the blindness of privilege. He continued to sweep floors for a few weeks, a symbolic gesture, a quiet protest against the superficiality of the art world. He knew the true value of art lay not in its price tag, but in its ability to connect, to inspire, to reflect the human soul. The Celtic knot on his wrist glowed brighter than ever, no longer a hidden mark of a secret, but a celebrated symbol of his true identity. The profound significance of this moment wasn't lost on anyone. It was a climax that transcended mere corporate drama. It was a vindication of a life lived with quiet integrity, a testament to the power of hidden talent, and a searing indictment of a system that valued surface over soul. Ethan Vance, the unseen janitor, had not merely cleaned the gallery, he had cleansed its very essence, sweeping away its arrogance and illuminating its true purpose. The stage was now set for a new era in the art world, one where the whispers of a Celtic knot and the rhythmic squeak of a janitor's mop would echo louder than any auctioneer's gavel. Chapter 6. The Roots Run Deep. The silence that followed Arthur Vance's declaration, "And as of this moment, I am the principal of Silverwood Estate," was not an empty void, but a living, breathing entity, heavy with the weight of shattered assumptions and profound revelation. Mrs. Alastair Finch Smythe remained rooted to her velvet armchair, her face a ghastly mask of disbelief, her carefully constructed world splintering around her. Her perfectly coiffed hair seemed to droop, her silk suit suddenly feeling like a suffocating shroud. She stammered, incoherent, her attempts at protest dissolving into strangled whispers. The vibrant life force seemed to drain from her, leaving her a hollowed-out shell, stripped bare of her self-importance. Mr. Sterling, the perpetually harried property manager, stood equally stunned, his mouth agape. He looked from Arthur's serene, authoritative gaze to the crumpled complaint in his hand, then back to Mrs. Finch Smythe's devastated face. The pieces of Silverwood's long-guarded secret, a truth known only to a handful of long-serving legal and financial advisors, were suddenly, irrevocably clicking into place. The almost mythical principal, the reclusive figure whose existence was merely a whispered legend in Viridia's elite circles, was the quiet man who tended the roses, the man he had offered polite, vague apologies to whenever Mrs. Finch Smythe complained. Sterling's mind reeled with the implications. His professional world, too, irrevocably altered. Arthur, standing calmly in the doorway, observed their reactions with a quiet dignity. The subtle, persistent warmth of the oak leaf scar on his left wrist seemed to pulse with a low, steady thrum, a silent affirmation of his ancient lineage and the land that bound him to it. It was a culmination, not of a plan to exact revenge, but of a quiet, patient unveiling of truth. He had allowed the deception to continue for decades, a protective veil over a life he cherished, a shield against the very superficiality he now exposed. "Mrs. Finch Smythe," Arthur finally spoke, his voice gentle but firm, carrying an undeniable authority that resonated through the grand parlor. "The standards you so vociferously champion are indeed important, but they extend far beyond the superficial sheen of a polished floor or the cut of a suit. They encompass integrity, respect, and a genuine understanding of the true value of things. Value, madam, that often lies unseen in quiet dedication and deep-rooted history, rather than in ostentatious display." He gestured towards the large window, offering a sweeping view of the vibrant gardens. "These grounds, this estate, they are not merely property to be owned or a backdrop for social climbing. They are a living legacy, entrusted to the care of those who truly understand their soul." His gaze, steady and unwavering, held hers. "You wish to remove the gardener," he continued, a faint, sad smile touching his lips. "But the gardener, as you now see, is inseparable from the very essence of Silverwood itself. To remove him would be to uproot the deepest roots of this estate." His words, delivered with such calm precision, seemed to pierce through Mrs. Finch Smythe's stunned silence. She had sought to dominate, to control, to impose her will, and in doing so, she had revealed her own profound ignorance. The irony was a cruel, perfect blade. The self-proclaimed arbiter of standards had just been exposed as fundamentally lacking in discernment, blind to the very essence of what constituted true value and genuine dignity. "As for your grievances," Arthur continued, his voice shifting to one of quiet finality, "your tenancy agreement, under new provisions, contains clauses regarding respectful conduct within the Silverwood community, and specifically towards its long-standing staff. It has become abundantly clear that you are unable to adhere to these standards. Your consistent pattern of harassment, your disruptive influence, and your blatant disregard for the well-being of the land and those who genuinely care for it, specifically Mr. Arthur Finch himself, has become untenable." He paused, allowing the full weight of his words to settle upon her, a final, unassailable judgment. "Therefore, Mrs. Finch Smythe, Your lease at the neighboring property will be terminated with immediate effect. You have 72 hours to vacate the premises. The pronouncement, delivered with such calm authority, struck Mrs. Finch Smythe with the force of a physical blow. Her carefully constructed world, built on facades and superficial judgments, crumbled around her. She was not only silenced and humiliated, but utterly dispossessed, stripped of her coveted status in the very community she had sought to dominate. The irony was a cruel, perfect blade. The snooty neighbor, complaining about the gardener's clothes, had just learned the true meaning of ownership and of true dignity. She stumbled to her feet, her face ashen, and without a word stumbled from the parlor, leaving behind only the ghost of her former arrogance. News of the dramatic meeting and Mrs. Finch Smythe's unceremonious eviction spread like wildfire through Viridia. The whispers that once lamented Arthur's unprofessional appearance now morphed into stories of awe and respect. The anonymous principal of Silverwood, a figure of distant myth, had been revealed as the humble gardener, a man whose wisdom and deep connection to the land resonated far more profoundly than any inherited title or manufactured wealth. The elite community, initially shocked, gradually succumbed to a grudging admiration, then outright reverence. They had been exposed to a truth far more powerful than any social dictate. Arthur Vance, however, remained largely unchanged by the sudden glare of his unveiled identity. He continued to walk the grounds of Silverwood daily, though now he did so openly as its owner and steward, his straw hat still shading his face, his sturdy boots still treading the familiar paths. He moved with the quiet authority of a king in his own, flourishing kingdom. His first act as the fully unveiled principal was not to impose stricter rules or demand outward displays of deference. Instead, he initiated a series of subtle yet profound changes to the estate and its relationship with the community. He established the Silverwood Conservancy, an independent trust dedicated to the preservation of the estate's natural beauty and historical integrity, ensuring it would never again fall prey to superficial whims or commercial exploitation. He opened sections of the vast gardens to the public on designated days, transforming a symbol of exclusivity into a shared space of natural beauty. He founded the Viridia Horticultural Fellowship, a scholarship program providing comprehensive training and resources for aspiring gardeners from all walks of life, nurturing the next generation of land stewards, regardless of their social standing or background. He ensured that the fellows, like himself, developed a deep, almost spiritual connection to the land they tended, recognizing its profound therapeutic and ecological benefits. He quietly transformed the image of the gardener from a subordinate role to one of profound expertise and respect. He held public talks in the very parlor where Mrs. Finch Smythe had made her final humiliating stand, sharing his vast knowledge of botany, ecology, and the history of Silverwood. He spoke of the intelligence of plants, the wisdom of ancient trees, and the profound lessons hidden in the cycles of nature. He demonstrated how true care for the land transcended mere aesthetics, focusing on ecological balance, sustainable practices, and the interconnectedness of all living things. These talks, initially attended out of curiosity, quickly became popular, drawing crowds from beyond Viridia's elite, eager to learn from the unassuming master. As he taught, as he walked the sun-dappled paths, the subtle oak leaf scar on his left wrist no longer felt like a secret to be guarded. It was a badge of honor, a living testament to his enduring connection to Silverwood. It hummed with a quiet, steady warmth, a constant reminder of his journey, of the legacy he had inherited and was now openly stewarding. It symbolized not just his personal history, but the deeper, hidden histories of resilience, quiet strength, and profound wisdom that existed in the unassuming corners of the world. It was a silent story etched in his skin, now openly shared with a world eager to learn. The old gardener, once deemed unprofessional by a snooty neighbor, had not only revealed himself as the true owner of the entire estate, but had become a symbol of a deeper, more meaningful kind of wealth, the wealth of knowledge, integrity, and a profound connection to the natural world. He had exposed the emptiness of superficial judgment and brought forth a new era of genuine appreciation for the quiet dignity of labor and the enduring power of roots that run deep. Silverwood, under Arthur's quiet, wise guidance, blossomed not just with rare flowers, but with a renewed sense of purpose, a testament to the fact that true beauty and true ownership are often found where they are least expected. The rhythmic squeak of a mop was no longer a symbol of anonymity for Arthur Vance. Now in his early 70s, his frame was no longer merely functional, but carried an undeniable grace, his spirit vibrant, his eyes alight with a profound sense of peace and purpose. The Viridia Gallery of Fine Arts, once a monument to elitism, had become a thriving testament to his enduring compassion and the transformative power of art. The Vance Institute for Found Art and Creative Expression, which he had painstakingly brought to life from the ashes of Julian Thorne's rigid conventions, had flourished beyond his wildest dreams. It was no longer a nascent project, but a national model, with vibrant branches in 5 major cities across the country, providing comprehensive support to thousands of formerly marginalized individuals and families, and serving as dynamic cultural hubs. Each Vance Institute center was a testament to his vision. Free open studios humming with newfound creativity, digital art labs teaching cutting-edge techniques, and dedicated therapeutic art programs for at-risk youth, offering solace and self-expression through the profound joy of creation. Ethan, though no longer directly managing the daily operations of the Vance Institute, remained its guiding spirit. He was a beloved fixture, often seen walking through the communal spaces, his presence a quiet anchor for those still navigating their own artistic paths. He would sit with young students in the new ceramic studios, his hands gently guiding them through the delicate process of shaping clay, sharing stories of his own struggles and triumphs. His words were always gentle, always encouraging, carrying the weight of lived experience and the light of hard-won hope. He often led informal workshops on using unconventional materials, demonstrating how profound beauty and meaning could be found and created anywhere, with any discarded object. His impossible works, once secret performances for a hidden camera, had found a new, legitimate home, celebrated for their raw honesty and evocative power within the very walls that once would have scorned them. His life, once defined by loss and isolation, was now overflowing with purpose, camaraderie, and the profound satisfaction of truly making a difference. He was honored as a hero, not just for his tenacity in seeking justice, but for his enduring compassion and his unwavering commitment to lifting others. Arthur dedicated a significant portion of his time to ensuring that no other deserving artist would suffer his fate. He became a passionate advocate for accessible art education and ethical cultural governance on a national level. His voice, once a whisper, now clear and resonant as he advised congressional committees on equitable access to artistic resources and inclusive cultural policies. He didn't just speak, he acted. Collaborating closely with Lyra, his steadfast artistic protege and the new director of programs at the Vance Institute, and Ms. Evelyn Reed, his unwavering champion, who had since won a Pulitzer for her investigative journalism that exposed Julian Thorne, Arthur co-authored a memoir titled The Silent Canvas, A Gardener's Journey to Unveiling Ownership. The book, a raw and poignant account of his life, from his forgotten artistic lineage, his family's ancient connection to the land, to his years of invisibility and ultimate reclamation, became an unexpected bestseller. It resonated deeply with readers across the nation, inspiring widespread empathy for unrecognized talents and driving significant, tangible policy changes within government funding allocations for community art programs, especially those focusing on unconventional art and vocational training. Crucially, a significant portion of the book's proceeds went directly back to the Vance Institute and the Oakleaf Foundation, ensuring their long-term sustainability and continued expansion. The Oakleaf Foundation, now renamed to reflect his profound personal connection to Silverwood and his scar, had also soared, establishing innovative art therapy centers and vibrant creative incubators in underserved communities globally. Arthur personally led workshops, teaching young people, especially those from marginalized backgrounds, how to express themselves through various artistic mediums, how to critically analyze commercial art systems, and how to use creative skills as tools for social good. He believed that artistic expression, combined with cultural literacy, was the key to unlocking future potential. He provided grants for unconventional art ventures, ensuring that initiatives like street art murals, pop-up galleries, and found object installations received the recognition and funding they deserved, challenging the narrow, commercially driven definitions that Thorne had once enforced. He also established the Finch-Smythe Forgiveness Scholarship, an irony not lost on him, fully funding higher education for bright, ambitious students from impoverished families who demonstrated genuine artistic talent, ensuring that creativity, unlike his own past, was never suppressed by circumstance. The scholarship's motto, etched subtly on each recipient's certificate, was, "From obscurity, a legacy takes root," a direct nod to his own arduous journey and the symbolic oak leaf scar that had guided him. He also initiated a vast international program to restore and digitize thousands of lost or suppressed artistic traditions and techniques from indigenous cultures and marginalized communities throughout history, ensuring their contributions would never be forgotten again. He worked tirelessly to establish access to art as a fundamental human right, not a luxury. The story culminates on a warm golden afternoon in the sun-drenched central courtyard of the flagship Vance Institute campus in Viridia. The courtyard, meticulously tended by students and volunteers, was a vibrant oasis of calm, alive with the gentle splash of a newly installed fountain sculpted by students from recycled materials, the soft murmur of conversations from a communal cafe, and the distant, joyful sounds of children engaged in an outdoor painting class, their canvases splashed with exuberant colors. Arthur sat on a rustic wooden bench, custom-built by the Institute's vocational woodworking program. The bench's design subtly incorporated elements of the oak leaf from his scar, its intricate curves carved into the polished wood. He was surrounded by a small group of young artists from the Oak Leaf Foundation's mentorship program. They listened intently, their faces reflecting a mixture of respect and quiet hope, as he shared a story not of grand victories, but of small acts of kindness that had kept his spirit alive during his darkest days. He emphasized the importance of resilience, of finding inspiration in unexpected places, and of using one's unique voice to create change. These young individuals, once facing uncertain futures, were now empowered and thriving, their eyes holding the promise of new beginnings, a testament to the Institute's transformative power. In his hand, Arthur held a small, beautifully polished silver oak leaf charm, custom-made to precisely match the shape and size of his scar. Its surface, gleaming under the afternoon sun, reflected the vibrant hues of the courtyard and the bright, hopeful faces of the children. The intricate details of the miniature oak leaf, once a painful reminder, now shone with renewed brilliance, a testament to his enduring legacy. He turned the charm slowly in his palm, feeling its smooth, familiar contours. The faint, warm hum that had always accompanied his scar seemed stronger now, a comforting presence. The symbol of the oak leaf, once a private mark, was now incorporated into the Vance Institute's official logo, subtly etched onto the entrance sign, its interwoven lines symbolizing connection, continuity, and endless creativity, embodying the upliftment the center provided. He looked up, his eyes, once weary and shadowed, now reflecting a deep, serene joy and an unbreakable spirit, as he watched a group of children from the Institute playfully release a flock of colorful, hand-painted kites into the clear blue sky from the rooftop garden. The kites, each a unique design, soared once, twice, then danced off towards the horizon, a powerful gesture symbolizing hope, freedom, and the boundless potential of the human imagination for all. The old gardener, once forgotten, had not only unveiled a profound artistic secret that changed everything, but had become the architect of a new, more compassionate world, where true art truly belonged to everyone. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss upcoming narratives that delve into the profound human spirit and the power of unseen heroes. Thank you for joining our journey.